Okay.
Right here. Right here.
Okay. Please report to here today.
Okay. Thank you for coming today. I'm Attorney Gloria Allred. I represent Alicia Arden, and I'll be doing an introduction, and then Alicia will make a statement, and then I will have some comments of my own. I have also, over a number of years, represented a total of 27 survivors of Jeffrey Epstein. This week, the House of Representatives and Congress is expected to take a floor vote in support of or against the Department of Justice's releasing all of the files that it has not yet released to Congress into the investigation of Jeffrey Epstein and those who associated with him, who may have enabled, supported, or conspired with him to sexually abuse and or sex traffic underage girls and adults. For a long time, the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell have been calling for the release of those files. While thousands of pages have been released to the House Oversight Committee as a result of a subpoena, which they authorized, thousands more pages have not been provided by the Department of Justice, even though polls show that the majority of Democrats, independents, and Republicans in the public have supported the release of those files. Their survivors have made it clear over and over again that they want transparency and they want to know the whole truth concerning how Jeffrey Epstein and Ms. Maxwell were able to sexually victimize and sex traffic children and adults for such a long period of time. Alicia Arden, who is here with me today, is the first victim of Jeffrey Epstein to have proof that she filed a police report because of
Make sure y'all hit that like button and share this live stream.
And, however, no prosecution of Jeffrey Epstein ever took place in reference to her police report. Alicia will explain how she feels about the upcoming vote in the House and the president's decision yesterday to tell House Republicans to vote to release the files. After Alicia speaks, I will share my concerns about the latest development on this issue announced by the president and how it may impact the survivors' desire to have all of the Department of Justice's files released. First, however, I'm honored to present Alicia Arden. Closer?
Yeah.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria. And thank you all for coming. And this has been a
Can you
very,
speak up a little?
okay. Thank you, Gloria. Is that better? Thank you. Thanks all for coming. This has been a very emotionally draining week for me, as I'm sure you all can imagine. And it's been very emotional for so many of the survivors, myself, of Jeffrey Epstein. And the current administration promised during the campaign to release the Jeffrey Epstein files, but all the files were not released due to the House Oversight Committee, even though the campaign and the committee had subpoenaed them. President Trump just told everyone to just move on. And then this week, revelations came out in emails from Jeffrey Epstein's estate, which mention President Mr. Trump. And that same president who told us to move on threatened a Republican member of Congress who changed her vote to support the survivors. And then when it became clear that many Republicans wanted the vote to release the files, and then the president changed his position. And as now told Republicans in the House to vote for the Department of Justice files to be released. So, as you can imagine, the events of this last week has completely been, it's hard for me to say. It's been very much a complete slap in the face to the victims, myself, who are just reaching and searching for justice in this matter. The only thing that we really learned from last week is that those in Washington are more concerned with playing political games than they are with being honest with the American people and helping the victims, myself, of Jeffrey Epstein, the victims of Jeffrey Epstein, and Miss Maxwell. And this week, the House of Representatives will finally have the opportunity to decide if the Epstein files will be released. So, speaking as one of the victims, I beg you to release these files once and for all. I mean, there is no valid reason for refusing to do so. So you can't claim that it is to protect the victims. I mean, when it is the victims, myself and the victims that have been calling for the files to be released. I mean, this should be really an easy bipartisan issue. And why would there be a single no vote? My hope is that finally these files will be released. And those who were complacent in Jeffrey Epstein's crimes will finally be named. And the American public will get the transparency that they've been promised and which we all deserve and they deserve. But if the House does not vote to be releasing these files, it will be very disappointing to all of us. And I mean, what reason could they possibly have for keeping this information such a secret unless it is to protect themselves? And I believe that. What could they have? It's in order just to protect themselves at the expense of myself, the victims, all of the public. And the more that we are denied the files, the more we assume that the very politicians who vote appear to be doing and so to hide the facts for their own political or personal reasons. So once again, I appeal to the members of the House, vote to release these files so that we can finally see who else helped Jeffrey Epstein and who else victimized so many children and adults.
Thank you, Alicia.
You're welcome.
I would like to begin by thanking the president for urging the Republicans in the House to vote to support the discharge petition and on the floor to release the Epstein files. However, I am concerned with what the president has not said. First, he has not explained to the public that a vote to release the files is not really necessary. The House Oversight Committee has already subpoenaed the files, and some of the files, but not all of them, have been released. The committee could seek a vote holding the Department of Justice in contempt, but most likely they do not have enough votes to take that step. Further, the Department of Justice could have released all of the files and still could, voluntarily. They did not need a vote in Congress or a subpoena to do that. However, because they have not released all the files, certain members of Congress want to vote on this issue, and now they'll have the opportunity to do that. If the House votes to support the release of the files, the issue will then go to the Senate for a vote. I note that the president has not urged the senators to vote to release the files. Even if the senators do vote in favor of the release, the bill will then go to the president. And the president has not indicated that he would even sign such a bill. Further complicating all of this is that the president has directed the Department of Justice to investigate high-level Democrats who are mentioned in the Epstein files. Attorney General Pam Bondi said she would do that, and she directed the Justice Department's office in the Southern District of New York to open the investigation. Will any Republicans whose names are in the files and who were associated with Jeffrey Epstein also have their names be released, or will their names be withheld? Will any of them be prosecuted if there's sufficient evidence to do that? Will the release of the names of Democrats in the files contaminate any future prosecution of those individuals named in the files? Also, Democrats who are being investigated should be able to argue selective prosecution, which appears to be political persecution. There are many more questions that flow from the president's statements and lack of answers to other important questions. The road to full transparency will be a long one, but I feel that the courage of survivors to persevere will help us to find the answers to many questions that they have. I look forward to as much justice as is still possible for all of the brave survivors. And I'll be happy to take any questions, and Alicia can take any if she wishes to. Would you speak up, please? Thank
Yes,
you.
I have a question. Emily Valdez, KNX. I recall the survivors saying that they were going to put together their own list and release it. Do you have any update on that?
The question is that she recalls the survivors indicating that they would put together their own list of others, third parties, in addition to Jeffrey Epstein and Ms. Maxwell, whom they allege sexually exploited or sexually abused or sex trafficked them. The question is, have they done that? The answer is each one of them knows their own truth. They don't know what happened to many others. There are alleged to be 1,000 victims of Jeffrey Epstein. I'm not sure if anybody knows the exact number, but many. So they may know what happened to some of their friends, but maybe they don't know the whole picture. That's what they're looking for. As to the actual release of the names, that would be very dangerous for the survivors to do it. And there are many attorneys involved, and I have no doubt that the attorneys have warned them that if they release the names of others who sexually abused them and said, Mr. X raped me, Mr. X sexually assaulted me, that they could be sued by the person whose name they released, who would then say, you have accused me of a crime because rape, sexual assault of a child. These are crimes. And that person was likely to say, you have defamed me. I'm innocent. I didn't do it. And therefore, I have filed a defamation lawsuit against you. Most of these survivors do not have sufficient funds to pay an attorney to defend them against a civil defamation lawsuit, which could run hundreds of thousands to potentially over $1 million in fees and costs. That's a danger, and they could be tied up for years in depositions and in that lawsuit, even if it goes to trial, which it may or may not ever go to trial. Having said that, I would be really surprised, anything is possible, if a survivor decided to release all the names that she knows about. Now, I believe that it was a member of Congress, perhaps it was a Marjorie Taylor Greene, I'm not sure, who said that she would release all the names on the floor of the Congress. Well, she would have some legal protection if she did it during a congressional proceeding. However, she's likely to be asked at some point who gave her those names. And then if it comes out that the survivors did, or any of them did, it may be that the survivors, again, will have further legal troubles. So the answer is, I don't know what will come next for the list of the survivors' accusers. Well, the survivors who are accusing a third party. Okay, thank you. Good, great question. How would they do that? Are there any other questions for Alicia or for myself?
Do you know Spanish at all?
Sí, un poquito.
Enough to answer questions?
No,
Or say anything in Spanish?
probably
Yes or no?
un poquito.
Probably not
A
enough,
little, but probably not enough. A little, un poquito.
but
It's
if
muy
you,
mal, the situation. And I want it to be muy bien. It's muy mal,
okay.
this situation.
If you'd like to wait until afterwards, I could have somebody translate for her. Okay, be happy to do that. Is there anything further? Any other questions? The last one was a very good one. Okay.
I'll ask, what would you love to see happen, like, for your case and for just this whole overall situation? What would be the greatest things you'd like to see in your guys' corner?
Well, yeah, there's no case pending right now. Because in reference to the criminal case of Jeffrey Epstein, he's now deceased. And in reference to Ms. Maxwell, the Supreme Court did not agree to hear her appeal. And so the only hope for her will be a pardon or commutation from the president, which reportedly she's seeking. But in terms of the survivors, they've always wanted truth and transparency. They would like to see all of the files released that the Department of Justice has. That, in other words, that would include investigative files from the FBI, from Homeland Security, and from any prosecutions which took place. I mean, the Jeffrey Epstein prosecution had begun, and then he died mysteriously in New York in custody. And they'd like to see all the files released from the Ms. Maxwell case as well. So that's what they're fighting for, is accountability and justice. It's not over just because there's been conviction of Ms. Maxwell and death of Jeffrey Epstein. I just want to add there's been a great deal of criticism of Todd Blanche, the Deputy Attorney General, who interviewed Ms. Maxwell in prison and who has now said recently, when some inconsistencies arose in the answer she gave him that day compared to other responses she had given in the past, that he didn't have in his possession, or the Department of Justice didn't have, emails from the estate of Jeffrey Epstein. So that raises even more questions. Why didn't they, if they didn't, why didn't the Department of Justice ever subpoena the emails in the Jeffrey Epstein files of the estate? How could a Deputy Attorney General of the United States go in and interview a convicted felon without having possession of those files? Again, more questions than answers. I don't know any prosecutor who would have done that. And of course, to have that high level prosecutor even interviewing Ms. Maxwell is also very suspicious as well. Any other questions?
If this doesn't work, you know, Trump wanting to release the names and stuff, what do you think would work to finally like get these files, get these names? Like this case has been going on for a long time.
And again, now, because he's directed the criminal investigation of these high profile Democrats, such as former President Clinton and others, this further complicates the whole situation. Is the Department of Justice going to say, well, we can't release anything that would be the usual profile in reference to these Democrats because we're investigating them, so we can't let the public know any evidence about them? So will they use that as a reason not to release that part of the files? But then what about any Republicans, high level, rich, famous, powerful men who also associated with Jeffrey Epstein, who were Republicans? I want to just add, in all my years involved in this case, and many and discussions with many survivors of Jeffrey Epstein, not once has anyone said to me, is the person who sexually abused me a Democrat or a Republican? It's not something they cared about. They just wanted justice for him. They didn't care if he even ever voted or was an independent or not affiliated with the party. So now we're just involved in this political bloodbath, trying to get answers. So all I can say is when the fog of political war clears, I certainly hope that the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein will have more answers and information than they have now.
I have one
Go
more.
ahead.
Oh, I wanted to get, Ms. Alden, is it okay, are you comfortable sharing a little bit of your story of what happened to you with Jeffrey?
You want to get closer here to the
Sure.
camera?
I'll move this.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, I have been asked this question
Good.
many times, and I always say, which is the truth, I speak to you as if we are coming back in 1997. So this happened to me in 1997. So if you come back with me, is a different time in 1997, which I thought I was highly always modeling and acting. I was auditioning for Melrose Place and Beverly Hills 90210, and I was working on Doogie Howser, and I was doing many shows and many modeling lingerie ads, and I did all these things and I was in Playboy, but I was in lingerie. But on the left side of me was Cindy Crawford in the magazine, and Claudia Schiffer, my two favorite Victoria's Secrets models, and I'm in the magazine with them. So I thought, I'm going to send my pictures to New York. And I somehow got wind of him from a friend of mine that was pursuing him for some type of real estate. And she went to meet him. And then he asked her, and he came to California from New York, and he had already seen my pictures.
Meaning Jeffrey Epstein.
Jeffrey Epstein.
Okay.
Yes. And he wanted to meet me. So I was notified and called by his secretary, which to this day, I think could have been Ghislaine Maxwell, but I don't know for sure. So I did go meet him. He ended up meeting my friend first, Jeffrey Epstein, and he had asked, do you know anyone that wants to be in Victoria's Secrets? And she said, no. And then she said, I don't want to be in Victoria's Secrets, but my friend Alicia does. And Jeffrey Epstein said, have her call me, and anything else and anyone else who wants to be in Victoria's Secrets, which is why to this day, it makes perfect sense to me now that he was recruiting what we all saw that he did, but I didn't know that that's what he did and became of him.
Where did
So
you meet him?
I ended up in the hotel room with him for what I thought was a Victoria's Secrets lingerie catalog audition.
And which hotel was that?
Shutters
In
in Santa Monica, California. And I wanted so desperately, like any model, to be in Victoria's Secrets. And I know that I could because I was doing so much other, and I know I could do it. And I know I could be in there based on my beautiful modeling pictures. And so we were there in the hotel room, and he opened the door. He was barefoot in what appeared to be a suite with a kitchen and a whole entire living room. It's very expensive to stay there and be there at Shutters. So he opened the door, and I'll never forget it. He had on a white shirt. It might have been Fila at the time, and black lingerie pants. No, black sweatpants. Sweatpants, not lingerie. Sweatpants and black. Oh no, he was barefoot. So he wanted me. He wanted to see my portfolio, and so it was going well until he said, "Come closer to me, and then I want to start handling you." He asked me to turn around, and normally in an audition, you might end up in a bathing suit, and you take off your wrap and you in a bathing suit, and you model and turn around, which is legitimate to do that. But then he wanted me to come closer, and he started touching me, and I just couldn't handle it anymore. And he said, "Let me manhandle you," which I've never heard that word. And it's very upsetting because he said that to me. I've never forgotten it. And he wanted to manhandle me, start touching my buttocks, my stomach, my hips and thighs, and my chest. And it just was becoming apparent that I just felt like I was going to just involved in a situation I didn't want to be in. So I wanted to leave. And so I said, "Jeffrey, I'm going to leave." And then he said to me, "I will give you $100. And to this day, it's so hard for me to say because I said, "I'm not a prostitute. I only want to be in Victoria's Secrets. I only want to be in the catalog." And I didn't take it. I threw it on the table, and because I did not want to go on what all the touching anymore. It was not right. It's not what happens in an audition. So I said, "I'm taking my portfolio and I'm leaving." And I'm leaving. So I left, and he's following me out of the room, and he gave me the $100. And I didn't know really what to do. So I decided to take it because if you've been a model and actress in LA and you are living in Hollywood, driving to auditions in Santa Monica in LA, it's a lot of gas. So then I did. And I said, "Okay, I'm leaving." And so he followed me to valet parking in the Shutters Hotel. And he got his car, which was a black Mercedes. And then I went out into mine, and I said, "Okay, so I'm leaving, and he just kind of waved and didn't say anything. I think he said, I'll call you, but I just was so traumatized as to what took place, and him touching me and groping me and telling me he wanted to manhandle me, and I'm in a bra and underwear at this point, because that's what happens. When you're going in for lingerie catalogs, you do have to be in a bra and underwear and a swimsuit to get the job. But I physically thought I was going to get it, and I had no idea that he really wasn't really who he said he was. And then I just felt I needed to leave. I drove right to the Santa Monica Police Department, which is across the street from the Shutters Hotel. So I just felt I needed to do it. And that I'm sure I've put out there before. I don't know if you want me to go into that. That was a whole saga. I went in and they didn't really want me to file it, and I felt I had to. So they took a little bit. They told me to think about it and come back. Think about it and come back. And so I just really wanted a female police officer, which I ended up not getting. But I did it, and to this day, I'm happy that I did. And I said everything in my statement that, he was touching me and groping me and taking my clothes off, as to my clothes are off, but I just felt I needed to get out of there. And I felt I had to file the police report, because what if he was doing this to other girls? I'm solely in there for, a legitimate audition. And he's already seen my pictures, but I did get a phone call from a woman. And then, when I was in the room, I was crying in front of him a lot, because I wanted to get in the catalog so bad. And he was saying, well, you look great in this picture, but then you look really busty. He did say that to me. You look really busty in this picture. And I said, I'm very fit. I'm in fitness magazines. A camera, it can appear bigger or not. So that's great. And so then he did say that. And then he said, I'll have to see. And then I started crying. And then he did get another phone call on his cell phone in front of me. And I, to this day, I can't prove it, but I think it was Ghislaine Maxwell, allegedly. I think, because they were together in 1997, right? In 1997. And then she got a phone. She called, maybe he answered the phone, and he said, I have this beautiful girl in front of me, and she's very upset. Before I said I had to leave, I was crying in front of him because I wanted to desperately get the catalog, the magazine, so badly. And so he said, I have this beautiful girl in front of me, and she's very upset.
Okay.
And I think it was her, but I can't prove it. But I think it was her.
Thank you. Okay. Anything else? Thank you very much for coming today. Okay.
Brad Edwards in the pursuit of justice. And I want to thank Sarah Drury on my team for working with them. Above all, I want to thank the survivors who are here today, whose courage and strength have brought us to this moment. I want to thank my co-lead, Congressman Thomas Massey, and Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene for standing with survivors here today. Today, as you can see, we're united in restoring trust in government. We're here not as partisans, we're here as patriots. We begin the work of bringing this country together, progressives, independents, moderates, and yes, MAGA supporters, to demand truth and justice. A nation that allows rich and powerful men to traffic and abuse young girls without consequence is a nation that has lost its moral and spiritual core. Americans are asking a very simple question. How is it possible that in the richest, most powerful country in the world. There are corrupt special interest forces, both foreign or domestic, that are preventing the release, that have a stranglehold on our government and are preventing the release of the full Epstein files. There is something that is rotten in Washington. Less than 1% of these files have been released. We are demanding today on the discharge petition that all of the files be released. We know we have 212 Democrats and we have 4 Republicans, courageous Republicans like Thomas Massey, Nancy Mace, who was so emotional yesterday after talking to the survivors, Congresswoman Boebert, and Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. We need just 2 more signatures to force the release. So we gather here on the steps of the Capitol to confront these corrupt forces. Today, we stand with survivors. We stand against big money. We stand to protect America's children. That is really what this is about. I now want to bring up my Republican colleague, Thomas Massey. He has shown so much courage, so much leadership. And I saw some people, I say the same thing about Marjorie Taylor Greene. She has shown so much courage on this issue. I saw some people when I was coming here calling her names. We've got to stop that. We've got to stop the partisanship on this issue. This is an issue where they both have shown real courage and leadership, and I appreciate them joining us today. Congressman Massey.
I want to thank my colleague Ro Khanna for co-leading this effort to bring transparency and justice for these victims. I hope my colleagues are watching this press conference. I want them to think, what if this was your sister? What if this was your daughter? When these survivors speak, the Washington establishment is asking the American public to believe something that is not believable. They're asking you to believe that 2 individuals created hundreds of victims and they acted alone, and that the DOJ has no idea of who else might have been involved, that nobody else did anything that rose to a criminal enterprise. The American people know that's not true. Now, the Speaker of the House just offered a fig leaf to my colleagues. They're going to vote on a non-binding resolution today that does absolutely nothing. I appreciate the efforts of my colleague, James Comer, who's leading the Oversight Committee. They may find some information, but they're allowing the DOJ to curate all of the information that the DOJ is giving them. If you've looked at the pages they've released so far, they're heavily redacted. Some pages are entirely redacted. And 97% of this is already in the public domain. So I'm calling on my colleagues, be one of the next 2 who sponsors this discharge petition. I think it's shameful that this has been called a hoax. Hopefully today we can clear that up. This is not a hoax. This is real. There are real survivors. There are real victims to this criminal enterprise. And the perpetrators are being protected because they're rich and powerful and political donors to the establishment here in Washington, D.C. So today we're standing with these survivors, we're giving them a voice, and I want to close by thanking them. They are brave. I hope they encourage other survivors to come forward and to tell their stories, not just of Jeffrey Epstein and Maxwell, but anywhere in the country. This is a message that we are sending. This is a litmus test. Can we drain the swamp? Are there people who are outside of the reach of the law? I don't think there should be. So hopefully today we'll get 2 more signatures on the discharge petition. That's all we need. And with that, I want to introduce the bravest woman in Congress, Marjorie Taylor Greene. I find it interesting that the 3 Republican co-sponsors are women. These are women standing up for women. And Marjorie was the first to do it. And I think she deserves all of our gratitude for breaking that barrier and leading the way for the other Republicans. Hopefully they can find their spines as well. And with that, I give you Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yes. Good morning. This is my 5th year in Congress, and this is the largest press conference that I've seen since I've been here. And this is because this is an issue that matters so much to Americans. This is an issue that doesn't have political boundaries. It's an issue that Republicans and Democrats should never fight about. As a matter of fact, it's such an important issue that it should bring us all together. It's grieved me to watch the arguments and debates take place among my colleagues and even the administration. I think this is something that was worth fighting for. You see, the women behind me are going to tell you stories that you've never heard before. These are unimaginable horrors that they've lived with for their entire lives since they were very, very young. But these are also similar stories that many children, teenagers, women, and even men are enduring nightmares right now as we speak. You see, these women have been fighting since the 1990s. I heard one woman tell us yesterday since 1996, and they have carried with them shame. But I want to tell you something. The shame does not fall on these brave, courageous women. The shame falls on every single person that coldly turned a blind eye to their abuse. The shame falls on every single person that enabled it. The shame falls on every single person that took money to continue it. And the shame falls on the people in power over the past several decades that protected the monster, Jeffrey Epstein, and his cabal that continued a nightmare. Those people deserve the shame. And today we are coming forward and we are going to fight like hell for these women, because we have to fight like hell for those that are enduring sexual abuse and are living in a prison of shame. Anyone that is being abused, it is not your fault. You should live with no guilt or fear or shame. All of the fault belongs to the evil people that do these things to the innocent. This is the most important fight we can wage here in Congress, is fighting for innocent people that never receive justice. And the women behind me have never received justice. And do you want to know why? It's because Jeffrey Epstein somehow was able to walk among the most rich, powerful people, not only in America, but foreign countries. Yesterday, I heard countries like Saudi Arabia, Russia, and even Israel, and other countries. The truth needs to come out, and the government holds the truth. The cases that are sealed hold the truth. Jeffrey Epstein's estate holds the truth. The FBI, the DOJ, and the CIA holds the truth. And the truth we are demanding come out on behalf of these women, but also as a strong message to every innocent child, teenager, woman, and man that is being held captive in abuse. This should never happen in America, and it should never be a political issue that divides us. And I want to thank Ro Khanna and Thomas Massey for doing something brave, crossing political boundaries for a very important fight. And I'm honored to join both of them. And I'm honored that Nancy Mace and Lauren Boebert signed the discharge petition along with myself. And I asked my Republican colleagues not to choose just one path for justice and transparency and accountability, but I asked my Republican colleagues to choose every path for justice.
To our forecasting capabilities, which is why it must be brought to the House floor soon. This tragedy occurred in his district. Congressman Chip Roy, for his able leadership on this bipartisan resolution. So, Mr. Speaker, I urge support of this legislation, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Alabama is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Is recognized.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I too support House Resolution 782 to express condolences and support for the victims of the July 4th flooding in Texas, and also to honor the acts of heroism and commit to stand with those impacted by the floods through the rebuilding. The floods that tore through Texas Hill Country were devastating beyond words. 135 lives lost, many, many lives changed forever in terms of having to endure it, some of whom we had the privilege of seeing here in this house last July. 3 souls are actually still missing. Families shattered, communities submerged, more than 200 homes damaged, businesses and infrastructure crippled. And before I go any further, I want to take a moment to acknowledge a heartbreaking loss that my district felt with this, that has touched the Mobile, Alabama community deeply. We're grieving the tragic deaths of 4 members of the same family, the Santana family, a family of military veterans. Eddie Sr., age 69, Ileana, his wife, age 66, Camille, his daughter-in-law, their daughter-in-law, age 38, and Mila Rose, just 5 years old. While visiting Hill Country, they were caught in the floods on that tragic evening. Only one member of that family, Eddie Santana Jr., survived. And I ask that we continue to hold him in our hearts and include his entire family in our prayers as they now face a future with unimaginable sorrow. To all of those grieving, I offer my most sincere condolences. The horror of this disaster is truly hard for any of us to comprehend. Yet in the face of tragedy, we saw extraordinary courage. First responders across Texas, the U.S. Coast Guard, and volunteers from across the country sprang into action, risking their lives to save countless others. And we are eternally grateful for their service and their sacrifice. And though the water has receded in Kerr County, the work is far from over. We must rebuild homes, we must restore the infrastructure, we must revive local businesses, but we must also analyze our federal response and ensure we ask the necessary questions and make the necessary changes. Members, we know now, in light of the tragedy, that the highly specialized search and rescue teams were delayed by over 3 days in getting there. Members also inquired recently about why some call centers' contracts had lapsed in the days leading up and following the flood, leaving some survivors' calls unanswered. And subsequent reports have indicated that a policy at DHS is a contributing factor, a policy that required the secretary to personally approve any expenditures over $100,000. And this is something that we have to analyze, and we must make the necessary changes. Reports have also revealed that payments for vital disaster recovery projects beyond this one in North Carolina have been indefinitely delayed, and this is not something we can tolerate in response to this tragedy. And if we're going to rebuild Hill Country with the urgency Texans deserve, the bottlenecks must be eliminated. Without this change, we cannot stand here and say that we're doing everything in our power to help Texas. But I am encouraged by the bipartisan efforts on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. We recently passed the FEMA Act with a 57-3 vote. And this legislation would dramatically overhaul FEMA and deliver swift resources to disaster survivors. And I urge House leadership to bring this bill to the floor without delay. And before I close, I want to take a moment to acknowledge that when the family in Mobile, Alabama, when it was brought to my knowledge that they were impacted by this flood, I, being a freshman member of Congress, reached out to some of my Republican colleagues and asked for the number of Chip Roy. And Chip Roy and I had never really had a conversation before that. But I texted him and I said, Chip, well, I called him, but Chip was understandably busy. And he responded back to a text message. I said, Chip, we got a family of 5 missing from my hometown. And Chip didn't ask questions. Chip just said, send me their names. Send me where they were. And I did. And unfortunately, the results were what they were. But Chip, I appreciate that. I do. And I know the families impacted by this appreciate your diligence here as well. So with that, I'll close with saying I support the House Resolution 782 and urge my colleagues to do the same. Let us honor the victims, support the survivors, and ensure our nation responds better and faster in the future. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I now yield 5 minutes to the resolution sponsor, Representative Chip Roy from Texas.
Gentleman's recognized.
Well, I thank my friend from Texas. Thank you for your leadership on this. And I want to thank all of my colleagues from Texas for their support, not just in this resolution, but throughout the ordeal back in July and since, as we continue to work through the tragedy and find the lives that have been lost, still looking for several, as the gentleman from Alabama noted. And I appreciate the kind words from the gentleman from Alabama. There's no time for politics when you're dealing with moments like that. And I appreciated engaging with him. I wish it had been a better outcome. But I do appreciate our engagement on that to try to do what we can for the families that were impacted. And, I will say a few things about this. I have never done a resolution. I generally don't like to focus on resolutions. I feel like we're here to do the business of the people. In this instance, I felt compelled to bring a resolution to the floor on behalf of the people of the Hill Country and behalf of the families affected throughout the country, as the gentleman from Alabama noted. It wasn't just that. It was our colleague from Georgia, Buddy Carter, who had family that were impacted by it, some who survived, at least one little girl who didn't. I could go through the list, but it affected many people in this chamber. The gentlewoman from Houston, from Texas, Lizzie Fletcher, who herself went to camps in the Hill Country and had constituents who were affected by it, and many others. So I felt compelled to bring this resolution to the floor, and I'll explain why in just a minute. But I do want to thank the leadership of so many people in response to the floods that ravaged the community in the Hill Country. And it's hard to put into words exactly how bad it was. 2 days after the flood, I drove down the river and with one of my staffers, and it looked essentially like an F5 tornado just ripped down the valley. 100-plus-year-old cypress trees that were just laid flat. There's so much vegetation waste that has been piled up. I think it would cover something like 100 football fields, 10 feet tall. It's so much damage that was done alongside the river. And I raise that because there's so much recriminations and questions. It's not a political thing since the floods, but it is hard to put into words the momentous event that it struck at 4:00 in the morning on July 4th. And there are things that no doubt can be done differently. A lot of this is going to be played out over time in litigation and legislation. But that's not really the story for me. That is not what I will remember. That is not what I will carry forward. I will carry forward, and I want to thank personally the President of the United States, Susie Wiles, the Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, the leadership that engaged from the federal level to the state to the local level, Governor Abbott, the Lieutenant Governor, the head of the Texas Department of Emergency Management, Nim Kidd, the head of DPS, Freeman Martin, all of the leadership in Kerrville County, Sheriff Latha in particular, the people in the community that stepped up, all of the first responders, the Coast Guard, the gentleman from Alabama mentioned, all of these are people who responded and stood up immediately and didn't point fingers. They just got together in an emergency center and they figured out what to do. And they came together to deliver as quick a results as you could, saved many lives in the process, and then dealt with the loss of life that came from the flood. We'll manage through this as we go forward, whether it's in Texas, whether it's here, whatever policies we change. And that's what you do. That's how you learn and you make policies and you adapt. But I want to make a point about the things that we know are impacted, things that will never be the same. Those cypress trees that are 100 years old, those are not going to be the same for hundreds of years. The damage that was done to the community, the buildings that were ravaged, the little girls whose lives were lost, the people who were down there vacationing whose lives were lost, the camps that were destroyed, Camp Mystic, Camp La Junta, Heart of the Hills, that were destroyed and are now either moving or having to redo their entire models and plans. None of those things are going to be the same. All of those things are now forever changed. But there's one thing that is enduring. And I talked about it when we talked about this the week after it happened, when we came back into this chamber. And that is the cross that sits on the hill in Kerrville. It is the faith of the people of Kerrville and Kirk County in Texas that came together under that cross and came together to stand up for something bigger and a vision that is much greater than the tragedy that we endured. That is what is actually going to endure and carry forward. A strong faith and a commitment in honor of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ and spreading the gospel of Jesus Christ, and the people that came together in prayer along the streets of Kerrville that comforted families, the $150 million that was raised through the Community Foundation of the Hill Country from all over the country and heavily from Texans, the concerts that were held, the events that were carried out, All of the stuff that came together so that people could not look to point fingers. And look, there's questions that will be asked, but to come together in a tragedy, to stand tall and to come together in a bond that about something that is greater than the loss of life, but that will carry forward and endure forever. That's what I will remember about this. We're going to rebuild. We're going to continue to work. I appreciate this resolution. It's important for the United States House of Representatives to recognize this. I urge its support and adoption, and I'm deeply appreciative of my friend from Texas and all those that have co-sponsored the resolution.
Gentleman's time's expired.
I yield back.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I reserve.
Gentleman from Texas reserves. The gentleman from Alabama is recognized.
Reserve the balance of my time.
Okay. Gentleman from Alabama reserves. Texas is recognized.
Yes, I have no more speakers and I am prepared to close.
Okay.
I reserve.
Okay. The gentleman from Texas reserves. The gentleman from Alabama is recognized.
I have no more speakers, and I'm prepared to close myself.
Is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, again, I support House Resolution 782 and urge my colleagues to do the same. And again, I want to express my sincere appreciation to Congressman Chip Roy for helping out my district or citizens of my district during this incredible time. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
Gentleman's recognized.
In closing, this resolution will cement unwavering support of this Congress to the brave folks from the great state of Texas. To honor the lives lost and the perseverance of the survivors, it is our duty to pass this resolution. And with that, I urge support of House Resolution 782, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and agree to House Resolution 782? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended. The resolution is agreed to. And without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. For what purpose does the gentleman from New York seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and pass Bill H.R. 2212 as amended.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 2212, a bill to amend the Homeland Security Act of 2002 to establish the Intelligence Rotational Assignment Program and for other purposes.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from New York, Mr. Garbarino, and the gentleman from Puerto Rico, Mr. Hernandez, each will control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from New York.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend the remarks and to include extraneous material in H.R. 2212.
Objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
You're recognized.
I rise today in support of H.R. 2212, the DHS Intelligence Rotational Program and Law Enforcement Supportment Act. This bill will improve the Department of Homeland Security's Office of Intelligence and Analysis collaboration with the wider intelligence community. As the only intelligence agency with the duty to share information with state and local law enforcement, it is imperative the Office of Intelligence and Analysis analysts have the effective partnerships within the intelligence community. In addition, I also want to take a second to express my gratitude to the rest of my Homeland Security colleagues on both sides of the aisle as we work to advance over a dozen bipartisan pieces of legislation to the House floor this week. As chairman, I look forward to sending many more legislative priorities to the House floor, and I urge support for H.R. 2212, and I reserve.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Puerto Rico is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of this bill, which directs the Secretary of Homeland Security in coordination with the Director of National Intelligence to require all components of the Department of Homeland Security intelligence enterprise to participate in the intelligence community's Civilian Joint Duty Program. The Civilian Joint Duty Program allows professionals across the 18 U.S. intelligence agencies to temporarily work in a different U.S. intelligence organization to broaden their skills beyond their home agencies. Requiring the participation of all DHS intelligence offices in the program will expose the DHS intelligence workforce to best practices in the field and promote cross-organizational networks. HR 2212 not only supports the professional development of the DHS intelligence workforce, but fosters more information sharing and better positions DHS to identify and mitigate threats to the homeland. I support the bill and reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. Gentleman from New York is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield as much time as he may consume to the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. McKenzie.
The gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I rise to support H.R. 2212, the DHS Intelligence Rotational Assignment Program and Law Enforcement Support Act. Next year, our nation will mark the 25th anniversary of the 9/11 terrorist attacks. As we approach this solemn milestone, it's important that we reflect on the progress we've made in preventing attacks, as well as the areas where we can continue to improve. Countless Americans work every day across numerous agencies to keep our citizens safe from potential threats. In the aftermath of the 9/11 attacks, the intelligence community was strengthened and its ranks were bolstered. Because of their work and the courage of our veterans and service members, our nation has been spared from similar attacks. We thank all of those who serve our nation, both as civilians and service members, in the fight to secure our homeland. Despite this success, we remain vigilant in the face of continuing threats against our country. That means continuing to analyze our tactics, refine our strategies, and ensure that critical information is efficiently shared between agencies. Information silos are not unique to the intelligence community, but they need to overcome them in a more acute way, and the consequences can be far greater if there are problems that arise. The intelligence community's ability to detect and prevent attacks against our homeland depends on coordinated and efficient information flows. We expect smooth interaction and joint maneuvers from our nation's warfighters, and we depend upon the same thing across all components of our intelligence community. However, this coordination can be improved. In 2017, the Inspectors General of the Intelligence Community, the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Justice, all completed a report that noted the DHS intelligence enterprise was not as effective and as valuable as it could be. This was attributed in part to a lack of unity throughout the DHS intelligence enterprise. For the intelligence community, the stakes could not be higher. Our nation's security depends on streamlined coordination across agencies. That's why this bill ensures that the intelligence components of the DHS are fully integrated within joint duty programs across the broader intelligence community, allowing intelligence analysts at DHS to sharpen their knowledge and expertise by spending time across different agencies. These benefits are similar to what many Americans have experienced throughout private industry. As a one-time board member for the Pennsylvania Workforce Development Board and the Republican chair of the Pennsylvania House Labor and Industry Committee, I got to see how innovative ideas like these can improve workplaces. Gaining experiences and making contacts across departments can enhance the efficiency and morale of an organization, helping them achieve their objectives. Rotational programs can take employees out of their respective bubbles, helping them see the big picture of the organization and the important roles that are played by employees in other areas. These same principles and strategies can certainly be translated into the Homeland Security space, where wider knowledge and institutional connections mean stronger security. By giving DHS staff the opportunity to gain knowledge and skills from throughout the department, we give the intelligence community a leg up in their fight to protect our nation. It's time for Congress to codify DHS's Intelligence Rotational Assignment Program and ensure that our intelligence community has the breadth of experience necessary to tackle the threats of tomorrow. With that, I yield back.
Madam Speaker, I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields. The gentleman from Puerto Rico is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I have no more speakers, and I am prepared to close when the gentleman from New York is prepared to close. I reserve.
Madam Speaker, I have no more speakers, and I'm prepared to close after the gentleman from Puerto Rico closes.
The gentleman from Puerto Rico is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I yield myself the balance of my time. I urge my colleagues to support HR 2212, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields. The gentleman from New York.
Madam Speaker, I yield myself the balance of my time. I again urge my colleagues to support HR 2212, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill HR 2212 as amended? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. For what purpose does the gentleman from New York seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and pass the bill HR 1608 as amended.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Union Calendar Number 180, H.R. 1608, a bill to require the Secretary of Homeland Security to produce a report on emerging threats and countermeasures related to vehicular terrorism and for other purposes.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from New York, Mr. Garbarino, and the gentleman from Puerto Rico, Mr. Hernandez, will each control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from New York.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend the remarks and include extraneous material in HR 1608.
Without objection.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
I rise today in support of HR 1608, the Department of Homeland Security's Vehicular Terrorism Prevention and Mitigation Act of 2025. Following the vehicular terrorism incident in New Orleans on New Year's Day, and as the U.S. prepares to host several major sporting events starting next year, it is more important than ever that the Department of Homeland Security take a leading role in addressing the threat of vehicular terrorism. This legislation will require DHS to conduct a comprehensive assessment of emerging threats and potential countermeasures. I urge all of my colleagues to support this legislation, and I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Puerto Rico is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I rise in support of HR 1608, the Department of Homeland Security Vehicular Terrorism Prevention and Mitigation Act of 2025. In the early morning on New Year's Day this year, an assailant carried out a devastating truck attack against pedestrians in New Orleans, killing 14 victims plus the perpetrator and injuring at least 57 others. This attack is the latest in a string of attacks using vehicles to inflict significant harm. HR 1608 would help enhance the Department of Homeland Security's efforts to address threats posed by vehicular terrorism. I support the bill's advancement, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I yield as much time as he may consume to my friend, gentleman from Florida, Mr. Jimenez.
The gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today in strong support of my bill, H.R. 1608, the Department of Homeland Security Vehicular Terrorism Prevention and Mitigation Act of 2025. On New Year's Day 2025, our nation was shaken by a horrific ISIS-inspired attack in New Orleans that took the lives of 14 innocent people and injured dozens more. This tragedy is a stark reminder that vehicles are increasingly being weaponized as instruments of terror. H.R. 1608 directs the Department of Homeland Security to confront the growing threat of vehicle-based attacks. It mandates a comprehensive assessment of current and emerging tactics, including the potential misuse of autonomous vehicles, rideshare platforms, and connected vehicle technologies. Further, the bill strengthens coordination between federal, state, and local governments and the private sector to better safeguard public gatherings, critical infrastructure, and high-density urban areas. I want to thank Congressman Troy Carter, who represents the community devastated by the New Year's Day attack, for his partnership and leadership on this effort. This practical and bipartisan legislation is about honoring the lives we lost by doing everything possible to prevent and mitigate future attacks. With major events on the horizon, including America 250, the FIFA World Cup and the Los Angeles Olympics, we must ensure every necessary security measure is in place to protect the millions of visitors and attendees these events will bring. I urge my colleagues to support H.R. 1608. Thank you, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Madam Speaker, I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Puerto Rico is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I have no more speakers, and I am prepared to close when the gentleman from New York is prepared to close. I reserve.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I have no more speakers, and I'm prepared to close after the gentleman from Puerto Rico closes.
The gentleman from Puerto Rico is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I yield myself the balance of my time. This bill will help make life easier for all Americans by pushing DHS to advance its efforts to prevent vehicular terrorism. I urge my colleagues to vote yes, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I yield myself the balance of my time. I again urge my colleagues to support H.R. 1608, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 1608 as amended? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative,
I request the yeas and nays.
the yeas and nays are requested. All those in favor of taking this vote by the yeas and nays will rise and remain standing until counted. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question will be postponed. For what purpose does the gentleman from New York seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 2659.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Union Calendar Number 188, H.R. 2659, a bill to ensure the security and integrity of United States critical infrastructure by establishing an interagency task force and requiring a comprehensive report on the targeting of United States critical infrastructure by People's Republic of China, state-sponsored cyber actors, and for other purposes.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from New York, Mr. Garbarino, and the gentleman from Puerto Rico, Mr. Hernandez, each will control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from New York.
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and to include extraneous material on H.R. 2659.
Without objection.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
I rise today in support of H.R. 2659, the Strengthening Cyber Resilience Against State-Sponsored Threats Act. Following the revelations of the Typhoon actor sponsored by the People's Republic of China, the committee found that the response of the previous administration was unsatisfactory. This legislation will create an interagency task force chaired by the Director of Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency to properly address the cybersecurity threat posed by the People's Republic of China cyber actors. I urge support and I reserve.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Puerto Rico is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I rise in support of H.R. 2659, the Strengthening Cyber Resilience Against State-Sponsored Threats Act. This bill establishes an interagency task force to coordinate efforts to combat cyber threats from the People's Republic of China and establishes reporting requirements to ensure Congress is informed on administration efforts. Under the Biden administration, CISA, FBI, and other federal agencies established valuable partnerships to address the threats posed by Chinese state-backed threat actors such as Bolt Typhoon and Salt Typhoon. This bill codifies those efforts. Unfortunately, hundreds of cybersecurity personnel have left CISA under Trump administration pressure, severely undermining the agency's ability to defend critical infrastructure from cyber threats from the PRC and other adversaries. I hope that passing this bill will help demonstrate to the administration the need to prioritize resources and personnel on combating serious cyber threats. With that, Madam Speaker, I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields, and the gentleman reserves. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield as much time as he may consume to the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Ogles.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Madam Speaker. I rise today in support of my bill, H.R. 2659, the Strengthening Cyber Resilience Against State-Sponsored Threats Act. Earlier this year, I introduced this legislation because the United States is facing an increasingly coordinated and persistent effort by malicious cyber actors linked to the government of the People's Republic of China, the PRC. These groups represent one of the most serious national security challenges confronting our nation today. Reports from federal agencies and private sector partners over the past several years have shown that Chinese state-sponsored cyber actors, including Volt Typhoon, Salt Typhoon, and other PRC-affiliated groups, have been targeting the systems and services that Americans rely on every single day. In committee, it's been under testimony, 98% of our municipalities operate under the cybersecurity poverty, meaning that they don't have the resources to defend themselves. These intrusions have affected communication providers, energy operators, water systems, transportation networks, and other sectors that are fundamental to public safety and economic stability. What has become clear is that these actors are not simply trying to collect information. In many cases, they have attempted to position themselves inside sensitive systems for long periods of time, for years in some cases, before being discovered. Their activity indicates preparation for the possibility of major disruption during a time of crisis, including potentially over Taiwan. This is a serious strategic concern, and it demands a serious national response. These groups often use advanced techniques that allow them to operate quietly within everyday system activity. They rely on legitimate tools and access privileges to conceal malicious behavior. This makes detection extremely difficult and allows intrusions to remain unnoticed until long after a compromise has taken place. While federal agencies have taken important steps to respond, the overall effort has revealed significant challenges in the way our government organizes its cybersecurity responsibilities. Multiple agencies share roles in protecting critical infrastructure, but they operate under different missions, structures, and authorities. During fast-moving or complex incidents, these differences can slow the exchange of information and create uncertainty about responsibility and response actions. H.R. 2659 addresses these gaps by directing the creation of a joint interagency task force led by the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, in partnership with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. This task force will bring together the agencies that serve as sector risk management agencies, along with intelligence community and other federal partners with responsibility for critical infrastructure security. The goal is straightforward. Federal actions must be aligned, coordinated, and based on a shared understanding of the threat environment. The legislation also requires the task force provide Congress with a detailed initial assessment, followed by annual reports for 5 years. These reports will offer insight into the tactics used by PRC-affiliated cyber actors, vulnerabilities across sectors, the potential impacts of disruptions during a major crisis, and any additional tools or authorities federal agencies may need. Classified briefings will ensure that Congress receives timely and accurate information necessary to evaluate our nationwide posture. The bill strengthens unity and effort. It improves coordination, it increases visibility and accountability, and it assures that the United States can respond to foreign cyber aggression with preparation rather than reaction. H.R. 2659 reflects lessons learned from real-world incidents. It elevates our national approach to cybersecurity, and it helps protect American communities from adversaries who are actively working to compromise the systems that support our way of life. We cannot let a bureaucracy stand in the way of defending our nation's cybersecurity. I strongly urge my colleagues to support this important legislation. Madam Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time.
Madam Speaker, I reserve the balance of my time.
been heard. They haven't just been on this in the last few months. They've been doing this in the wilderness for years, and they are really models of courage. Bradley Edwards and Brittany Henderson, who are the attorneys for the victims. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Roe and Thomas Massey. I really appreciate you putting forth this discharge petition. It's tough to understand that we have to be here because this doesn't seem like a partisan issue. This is an issue. Sex trafficking and sexual abuse transcends politics. We as Americans expect equal protection under the law, and there can be no doubt that Jeffrey Epstein received far greater protection than any of the victims that he abused for years. In 2008, Courtney Wild walked into my office because she was a part of a federal investigation into Jeffrey Epstein, where all she wanted was the government to talk to her. Little did she know the government had worked out a secret immunity deal for Jeffrey Epstein, and we had to file Jane Doe's versus United States of America to prove that Jeffrey Epstein worked out an illegal non-prosecution agreement with the government. That was 2008. It took us 10 years battling the government pro bono for the judge to ultimately determine that the victims' rights were violated. The government has mistreated them after Jeffrey Epstein mistreated them. We then filed civil lawsuits against Ghislaine Maxwell, which has resulted in her being in prison. Our civil lawsuits led to her prosecution. We filed lawsuits against Jeffrey Epstein, against his estate, and against two financial institutions, JP Morgan and Deutsche Bank, that proved that they knowingly provided the financial infrastructure for a sex trafficking operation. Unfortunately, all of the documents and evidence that we have worked so hard to gather hide behind protective orders, confidentiality agreements, and bank secrecy laws. That is why this discharge petition is so important. While we have seen the documents, you haven't. And when you see the documents, you're going to be appalled. And the American people deserve to see everything. When you sign this discharge petition, it should mean nothing is off limits. That means the documents in the possession of the CIA should be made available. Those in the possession of the FBI going back decades should be made available. The SEC, financial records in the possession of FinCEN should be made available. Everybody knows that evil flourishes in the darkness. Corruption flourishes in secrecy. It is time right now to make a difference for the women that are behind me right now. They have been courageous and fought through this whole thing. Whether you're a Republican or you're a Democrat, this one is an easy call. You're an American who cares about equal rights and equal protection under the law. If you care about these women, if you care about our country, and you care about this issue, this should pass with flying colors. I really appreciate everybody being here.
Hi, good morning. My name is Brittany Henderson, and I think in addition to thanking the wonderful congressmen and women who are here today, we need to thank the women, and not just the women who are going to speak, but the other women who are standing behind them, along with other lawyers, Sigrid McCauley, and people who have been fighting for a very, very long time for the world to give this kind of attention to an issue that it should have had forever. This administration has the opportunity to do what the past administrations did not do. This administration can either stand with the victims and stand for the victims, or it can continue to hurt the victims like has happened in the past. We aren't here just to ask for transparency, though. We're here to ask for protection. The women here represent hundreds of other women who we have spoken to, many of whom were trafficked from other countries, from Eastern European countries where women don't have the rights that we have here. Women don't have the protections that we have here. And those women are terrified that their names will be released in these files. The government won't know that they're victims to redact and protect them. So we ask that you please, whoever is going to be in charge of redacting these files and in charge of this transparency, do it in a way that protects the women brave enough to be here, but also protects the women who are terrified that every day when they turn the TV on, something bad is going to happen to them in Ukraine, in Russia, in whatever country they live in, because no one is listening to them there. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And please protect these women while we seek transparency.
Good morning.
My name is Anushka DeGiorgio, and I stand before you today as a survivor of both Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. I want to thank Congressman Massey and Khanna for their role in putting together this very, very important bill. Every day of this journey toward healing has come at a profound cost to my mental health. But I am here. I chose to come because this bill really matters. I speak today not only in service of my own recovery from trauma inflicted by Maxwell and Epstein, but to honor the lives, the courage, and sacrifices of Virginia Giuffre, Caroline Andriano, and others who could not continue. Their voices mattered. Their stories must not be forgotten. Accountability is what makes a society civilized. Equal opportunity and equal consequence for all. Consequences are not about punishment alone. They exist to deter future harm, to protect vulnerable, and to set a standard of justice. If Ghislaine Maxwell were pardoned, it would undermine all the sacrifices I made to testify and make mockery of mine and all survivors' suffering. That is why the Epstein Files Transparency Act is so essential. It requires the Department of Justice release all the records related to Epstein and Maxwell investigations, flight logs, immunity deals, internal communications, and even the records surrounding Epstein's detention and death. And crucially, it forbids withholding documents simply because of embarrassment, reputational harm, or political sensitivity. This is about ending secrecy wherever abuse of power takes root. But transparency alone is not enough. Survivors need protection, resources, and legal support. If this Congress is serious about justice, then let this moment also affirm your commitment to provide victims with the legal aid they need to confront abusers, to navigate complex systems, and to reclaim their power. Transparency must be matched by support, or else too many victims will remain silent out of fear and lack of access. The statistics demand action. Nearly 1 in 5 women in America will experience rape or attempted rape in her lifetime. Every 74 seconds, someone is sexually assaulted. Every 9 minutes, that person is a child. These are not numbers, they are people. They are your daughters, your sons, your constituents, your friends. Statistically, 1 in 5 of your families will face this nightmare. The days of sweeping this under the rug are over. We, the survivors, say no more. I want to help create a world where survivors of sexual abuse and abuse of power can come forward safely. And I ask Congress to join me in that effort, not only by passing this bill, but by ensuring that those who step forward have legal support to face their abusers and see justice done. When Judge Berman gave Epstein survivors the chance to finally speak, the world listened. After so many years, survivors were heard. That moment was historic, and so is this moment. For me, the turning point was when I had my daughter, and on the day she was born, I knew I had a responsibility to protect her and to protect all children. I have to use my voice, the voice that had been silenced by fear and shame for so many years. Make no mistake, my polished exterior is a shield hiding a wound that still bleeds. But through this wound, I have found purpose. To be part of lasting change in how we confront exploitation and abuse. And to be clear, the only motive for opposing this bill would be to conceal wrongdoing. You have a choice. Stand with the truth or with the lies that have protected predators for decades. I am no longer weak. I am no longer powerless. And I'm no longer alone. And with your vote, neither will the next generation be. President Trump, you have so much influence and power in this situation, please use that influence and power to help us, because we need it now and this country needs it now. Thank you.
Hello. My name is Annie Farmer, and I was 16 years old when I was flown to New Mexico to spend a weekend with Epstein and Maxwell. That same year, 1996, my sister, Maria Farmer, reported what happened to me there, along with reporting her own assault at their hands and their theft of sensitive photos of herself, of me, and our younger sister that she had taken for her work as a figurative painter. I am now 46 years old. 30 years later, we still do not know why that report wasn't properly investigated, or why Epstein and his associates were allowed to harm hundreds, if not thousands, of other girls and young women. We have never been told whether those images were found when they discovered a large amount of child sexual abuse material on his property. As a psychologist, I understand that when the systems meant to protect us recreate the abuse cycle, the betrayal that occurs can be just as damaging as the original trauma. This happens when survivors of these crimes are not believed, when our well-being is not weighed as heavily as those who have more resources or more privilege, and when perpetrators of these crimes are given a platform rather than the survivors of them. For so many years, it felt like Epstein's criminal behavior was an open secret. Not only did many others participate in the abuse, it is clear that many were aware of his interest in girls and very young women and chose to look the other way because it benefited them to do so. They wanted access to his circle and his money. Their choice to align with his power left those of us who had been harmed by this man and his associates feeling very isolated. I could never have imagined being here today and this chorus of support that we have all received. I have been sent so many notes and messages from people with no direct connection to this case who've expressed their solidarity with us. And I believe that is because, in part, as Anushka explained so well, this is an extremely widespread issue of child sexual abuse, of sexual exploitation, of sexual violence. This affects almost every family in some way. From my conversations with women in these last few days and from all of the support that we've received, it's very clear to me that we are not going away, we are not going to be quiet, and we are not going to give up. And I ask the American public to stand with us and not give up. At a time with record high levels of distrust in our institutions and a perception that there are two Americas, one for those with power and privilege and one for everyone else, passing this Epstein transparency bill is one important step that can be taken to prove to Americans that the government does not side with sexual perpetrators. A thorough public review of this information is an important step in preventing the type of systemic failures that have occurred in this case and harmed all of us. An important step towards healing for those involved. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to say thank you, everyone, for being here today on this very powerful and special day for all of us here. My name is Marina Lacerda. I was minor victim 1 in federal indictment of Jeffrey Epstein in New York in 2019. I was one of dozens of girls that I personally know who were forced into Jeffrey's mansion on 9 East 71 Street in New York City when we were just kids. Today is the first time that I ever speak publicly about what happened to me. I never thought that I would find myself here. The only reason that I am here is because it feels like the people who matter in this country finally care about what we have to say. As an immigrant from Brazil, I feel empowered knowing that the little girl struggling to get by at 14 and 15 years old finally has a voice. For the first time, I feel like I matter as an American. I was only 14 years old when I met Jeffrey. It was the summer of high school. I was working 3 jobs to try to support my mom and my sister when a friend of mine in the neighborhood told me that I could make $300 to give an older guy a massage. It went from a dream job to the worst nightmare. Jeffrey assistant Leslie Groff would call me and tell me that I needed to be at the house so often that I ended up dropping out of high school before 9th grade. And I never went back. From 14 to 17 years old, I went and worked for Jeffrey instead of receiving an education. Every day I hoped that he would offer me a real job as one of his assistants or something important. I would finally have made it big, as like we say, the American dream. That day never came. I had no way out. I was until he finally told me that I was too old. There are many pieces of my story that I can't remember, no matter how hard I try. The constant state of wonder causes me so much fear and so much confusion. My therapist says that my brain is just trying to protect itself, but it's so hard to begin to heal knowing that there are people out there who know more about my abuse than I do. The worst part is that the government is still in possession right now of the documents and information about that could help me remember and get over all of this maybe and help me heal. They have documents with my name on them that were confiscated from Jeffrey Epstein's house and could help me put the pieces of my own life back together. But I don't have any of it. And I know the same is true for many of these women. We are here to support this bill today, not only for transparency, but for the American people. But if the government is going to release these documents to the public, describing the crimes committed by Jeffrey Epstein and others, the least that they can do is give me my documents that they have about me. The other survivors deserve the same respect from our government. While identifying information must be redacted to the public, it is equally important to provide the victims themselves with unredacted information. I will never forget when the FBI agent showed up in my door in 2008. Jeffrey Epstein hired a lawyer to represent me, or more like to represent him, I like to say. I couldn't ask any questions, and I had no idea what was going on. I was terrified. Until today, I think most of us are still terrified. I thought somebody was going to kill me. I thought something was going to happen to my sister or my mother. It went further out to even maybe thinking something would happen in Brazil with my family. And then one day, the lawyer said that everything was just going to go away, like nothing happened. I didn't need to testify. When I asked him why, he gave no explanation. That was it. So why? Why was I never called to testify then? We could have saved so many women. We could have saved so many lives from being abused. Why did he get away with it in 2008? Why was he able to go on in the abuse with hundreds of girls after the Florida investigation? Why didn't they let me testify to help stop him? Our government could have saved so many women, but Jeffrey Epstein was too important and those women didn't matter. Why? Well, we matter now. We are here today and we are speaking and we are not going to stop speaking. Today, I stand here with the women who have really helped me to find the strength to come out and come forward to share my story for the very first time. Together, we are stronger than ever. While she may not be with us, Virginia Roberts, we will continue to use our voices to strengthen yours always. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Courtney Wild. I just wanted to take a second and just have a moment of silence for all the women survivors that aren't here with us today, that passed away due to anxiety, depression, trying to keep up with this case. A moment of silence, please. Thank you. My name is Courtney Wild. I was only 14 years old when I was introduced to Jeffrey Epstein by a 13-year-old friend of mine. The details of the abuse that he inflicted on me for years is not important today. In 2028, I was cooperating with the federal government in the investigation of Jeffrey Epstein. They sent me a letter telling me to be patient because this was going to be a lengthy investigation, but at the same time, they refused to talk to me and tell me what was going on. So I hired an attorney, Brad Edwards, because I was hopeful to get some answers. When I walked into his office at 19 years old, Brad sued the government for refusing to tell me what was going on under the Crime Victims' Rights Act. The only reason anyone ever found out that the government had already given Jeffrey Epstein immunity through the non-prosecution agreement was because our lawsuit forced the government to tell us. Otherwise, nobody would even know that today. Sometimes it's hard to believe that I had to sue the United States just to learn that my abuser was given immunity. I started as Jane Doe, but I decided I was proud enough to take on our country, and I was on the right side of history. We fought the government for 10 years to prove that the government violated our rights as crime victims and the crime victims' rights in order to protect a pedophile. We had to win the 11th Circuit Court Appeals to force the government to turn over thousands of pages of emails between Jeffrey Epstein and the government. Those emails provided the proof that the government worked very hard with Jeffrey Epstein to violate our rights. Why? Why did the government work so hard to protect Jeffrey and not so hard to protect me and my other innocent friends? Why was Jeffrey so important to the government, and why was I so insignificant? Why did nobody but our lawyers care before now? It seems people have only started to care because of Twitter and politics. But I would like to say this has nothing to do with politics. This is not a blue thing or a red thing. This is an everyone thing. We can all agree on this. The injustice that has happened here. Multiple, over and over. Everybody that talks about this just seems to make it worse. We need transparency. It's time for us to see beyond the curtain. Why was Jeffrey Epstein so protected? Who is still being protected? And who protected them all? So the world can understand how Jeffrey was able to abuse so many of us for so long. I was lucky to have Brad Edwards, Brittany Henderson, and Paul Cassell take on my case pro bono and fight fearlessly over 20 years' time. I would like to thank them, and I'd also like to ask the Trump administration to please sign off on the Crime Victims' Rights Reformed Act, the Courtney Wild Crime Victims' Rights Reformed Act that's we're trying to get passed here so we can close the loopholes in the CVRA case that Epstein's attorney used to their benefit to get away with this. Thank you so much.
Good morning. First and foremost, we want to extend our deepest gratitude to Brad and Brittany Edwards, Congressman Massey and Kana, and above all, the brave survivors who have entrusted us with the privilege of speaking today on behalf of Virginia. Robert Giuffre, as her family. We are here today because we support H.Res.581, the Epstein Files Transparency Act, in its entirety. But as much as this bill is about shining a light on truth, it's not just about the bill. This is about justice. This is about survivors. This is about justice against the rich and powerful who have stolen something from these women and many children at the time, their freedom. The freedom to live their life without mental and physical scars that have been inflicted upon them by those who thought they were untouchable. The same freedom that these monsters took from these survivors, they should never be afforded. They should never be allowed to continue their lives with impunity. Let's be clear. This is not a political issue. This is not about left or right. This is about humanity. This is about doing what's right. And this is about ensuring that the future we leave behind isn't one where the powerful can hide behind their wealth, their influence, and their money to evade justice. Our plea to you, whether you're a dad, a mom, a brother, or a sister, look your young ones in the face, look them in the eye, and tell them you didn't stand against the very people who raped, molested, and preyed upon children and young women. Tell them you were willing to negotiate a deal. Money should never be what makes something right or wrong. If you vote no, your stance will be clear. You will be choosing to stand on the side of the rich and powerful, allowing money to buy your way out of the consequence. But here's my one ask. Look these survivors in the eye and tell them why. Then look the people of the United States in the eye and tell them why. And then, when you're alone, look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself why. Virginia said it best, and I quote, "I have physical and mental scars that will never heal. I have memories that will never go away. They say time can heal, but this won't. Not until the justice system makes an example out of these people with so-called privileges. I just call it money. The only time I can begin to heal is when their freedom is taken from them, just like they did to me and literally thousands of other victims. The survivors of this horrific abuse are watching. The American people are watching, and history is watching. Which side will you be on?" Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jenna Lisa Jones, and I was only 14 years old when my friend brought me over to Jeffrey Epstein's house in Palm Beach in 2003. I had a terrible home life, but I was such an innocent kid then. I always did my best in school, and I had such a positive outlook on life. Until that day that I met Jeffrey, I have never been more scared in my life than I was that first time that he hurt me. I remember crying the entire way home, thinking about how I couldn't ever tell anyone about what actually happened in that house. This guy was so rich and had so many pictures with so many famous people, and no one would have ever believed me if I told them. I want to thank Congressman Rowe and Congressman Thomas Massey for having me here today. It was really hard for me to find my voice and to become strong enough to speak about my abuse. I didn't come forward until 2019, and even then it was like I was afraid of a ghost. I know that I was just a little kid, but sometimes I still feel like it is my fault that this happened. Being given the opportunity to speak at the United States Capitol building about something that is so important, not just to me and the women before you, but to the entire country. Together, we can finally make a change. And that is thanks to the people like these two congressmen and their teams who actually care about the victims. If you are a member of Congress and you are listening to all of us speak here today, please really listen to us. Please vote for this bill to be passed. Please recognize how important it is for transparency relating to Jeffrey Epstein. Whether you are a Democrat or a Republican, this does not matter. This is not about sides. You are an American, and you are a person who has chosen to serve in an elected position to stand up for those you represent who cannot always stand up for themselves. We are those people. We are the Americans that you promised to protect. And we need your help. Please, President Trump, pass this bill and help us. Make us feel like our voices are finally being heard. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Haley Robson. I was a 16-year-old high school student athlete who made good grades and had high aspirations for college when I was recruited and asked by a classmate of mine alongside with a 20-year-old male if I wanted to give an old rich guy a massage. But what high school girl would not want to do that? That day changed my life forever. And when I got into the massage room, Jeffrey Epstein undressed and asked me to do things to him. My eyes welled up with tears, and I have never been more scared in my life. When it was over, he paid me $200 and requested in exchange that I bring a girl each time to make another $200. I told him I did not want to do that, and then he gave me an ultimatum. Either you come here and massage me when I call you, or you bring me friends of yours to massage, and I will give you $200 per girl for each time she comes. I felt and hoped to never hear from him again, but he called me every day. He was so wealthy and powerful, and he would not let me go. I felt I had no choice. If I disobeyed him, I knew something bad would happen. So knowing I did not want to be sexually abused, I started to bring him other girls from my high school, and he paid me $200 for bringing them. I just hoped each time it would be the last time. One day, the stepmom of one of the girls brought him and called the police on Jeffrey Epstein. The police then called me in for questioning. I had told them the truth despite the fact that I was a teenager and a minor, and I was able to tell the police the names of all the other victims. The police treated me like a criminal. I had, by this time, had turned 18. I had been with Jeffrey since I was 16 and for 2 years. So they had told me So they told me I was going to be arrested. My name was then distributed to the press as a co-conspirator of my abuser, who I detested. My entire world was crashing in around me, and I started being threatened and bullied, till this day still receiving death threats. I was singled out and for many years had to suffer a smear campaign of lies about me because of the way that I was portrayed by the press. The press made me out to be a predator when I was just a 16-year-old little girl who was sexually abused by a powerful man and an evil man. For years, I had no friends. My boyfriend was murdered, and there was nowhere to turn. The government, after investigating more, learned that I was true a victim, but the damage was done and it was too late. There was no way to undo the harm the press had caused me. In 2019, I met Brad Edwards and Brittany Henderson. They changed my life and they believed in me and have helped me to finally heal. Healing is a process, and I may never get there. But the passage of this bill requiring the government to produce all the evidence that it has gathered on Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell is a huge component of healing for me and for the many other women who have suffered for so long. For many reasons. First, we and the rest of the world need answers. Why was he so protected? And why didn't anyone ever care to stop him? It doesn't take a brain surgeon to know that if he is spending thousands of dollars a day paying high school girls he abuses and had a lot of access to cash. I learned through my attorneys in the JP Morgan class action case that there were years when his staff withdrew over $1 million in cash a year. Was that not a big enough red flag? There were wire transfers to other victims, and the government did not protect us. The banks did not protect us. So lift the curtain on these files and be transparent. Every single time a new conspiracy gets circulated in the media, whether he is still alive, what powerful person had him murdered, who was on the Epstein client list, and there are names going around on TikTok and Instagram, we, the survivors, are suffering severely. We take our kids to school and everyone is talking about it. We can't read the news or do anything without hearing crazy stories that are only able to live on because the government continues to hide the evidence and the truth. So people just make up stories. Those stories hurt. They hurt real people who have already been hurt. And we have lost so many Epstein victims to suicide, and maintaining the real truth in secrecy only allows for conspiracy theorists to tell lies that drives up our anxiety and fears and will continue to lead to more pain, more suffering, and honestly, more deaths of innocent victims. It's time you do is right by us. Unseal all the documents. We are requesting transparency, and I am requesting every congressman and woman that goes against this bill be outed. I want to know. Thank you.
Tear into the press and tear into Congress.
Hi there, my name is Lisa Phillips, and I'm the host of a award-nominated podcast called From Now On, a platform supporting survivors. I want to thank all of my survivor sisters who came before me today. I'll be very short. In the year 2000, I was taken to Jeffrey Epstein's island while on a photo shoot on a nearby island. Who I saw and what I experienced there was a glimpse into a very dark and disturbing world. For years after, I tried to avoid Jeffrey, but he had introduced me to Katie Ford, the owner of the Ford Modeling Agency. Epstein's reach went to the very top of fashion, arts, and entertainment. This did not just happen to underage girls in Florida. In New York City, hundreds of young, ambitious women were abused by him. Epstein was not just a serial predator, he was an international human trafficker. And many around him knew, many participated, and many profited. And yet he was protected. So I stand here today for every woman who has been silenced, exploited, and dismissed. We are not asking for pity. We are here demanding accountability, and I'm demanding justice. Congress must choose. Will you continue to protect predators, or will you finally protect survivors? And also, I would like to announce here today, us Epstein survivors have been discussing creating our own list. We know the names. Many of us were abused by them. Now, together as survivors, we will confidentially compile the names we all know who were regularly in the Epstein world. And it will be done by survivors and for survivors. No one else is involved. Stay tuned for more details.
Hello, my name is Shantae Davies, and I'm here before you today as a survivor of decades of pain, trauma, and betrayal at the hands of Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein, and the people who enabled them, and a government that for far too long refused to help. In 2002, I was living in California, a young woman with high aspirations of becoming an actress. I was already beginning to make a name for myself in the industry. A person I trusted, someone I thought was a friend, invited me to meet a powerful woman who could help advance my career. That woman happened to be Ghislaine Maxwell. I was asked to give her a massage, though I had almost no experience, and when I did, she praised me and promised introductions to someone enormously powerful, someone who could change the course of my life, and that man was Jeffrey Epstein. At first, I was an excited young woman on top of the world. Epstein flew me to his private island. He listened to my dreams, promised to help, but his promises came with a catch. The abuse began. He told me to keep it secret. He manipulated me with quid pro quo I did not consent to, but I felt I had no one to turn to. He was too powerful. I was just one of the many young women trapped in his orbit. I was even taken on a trip to Africa with former President Bill Clinton and other notable figures. In those moments, I realized how powerless I was. If I spoke out, who would believe me? Who would protect me? Epstein himself was the most powerful leader of our country. Epstein surrounded himself, with the most powerful leaders of our country and the world. He abused not only me, but countless others, and everyone seemed to look away. The truth is, Epstein had a free pass. He bragged about his powerful friends, including our current president, Donald Trump. It was his biggest brag, actually. And while what I endured will haunt me forever, I live every day with PTSD. I live as a mother trying to raise my child while distrusting a world that has betrayed me. This kind of trauma never leaves you. It breaks families apart. It shapes the way we see everyone around us. But one thing is certain, unless we learn from this history, monsters like Epstein will rise again. There are files, government files, that hold the truth about Epstein, who he knew, who owed him, who protected him, and why he was allowed to operate for so long without consequence. Why was Maxwell the only one held accountable when so many others played a role? Why does the government hide this information from the public? This secrecy is not protection, it's complicity. And as long as the truth is buried, justice will remain out of reach. That is why this bill matters. Passing it will, bless you, ensure that the suffering of survivors is not in vain. Passing it will bring accountability, transparency, and prevention. It will help protect the next generation of predators who seek to place themselves above the law through wealth, influence, and connections. This is not just my story. It is about every survivor who carries invisible scars. It's about the weight we live with daily. It is about the families broken and the futures stolen. So I ask you, President Trump and members of Congress, why do we continue to cover up sexual abuse and assault? Who are we covering for? Let the public know the truth. We cannot heal without justice. We cannot protect the future if we refuse to confront the past. Thank you.
Let's just give a round of applause for all the courage and strength that the survivors have shown. We now will take a few questions. You can always get Congressman Massey, me, or Congresswoman Green in the hallways and other places. If you have questions for us, that's fine. But I wanted to see first if you have questions for the lawyers and the survivors, and Brad will facilitate any of the questions to the survivors. Yes.
Yeah. This question would be for the survivors, Mr. Edwards. The president has said that this Epstein issue is a hoax, is the word that he used. Can we get your reactions to what you think when you hear him say that?
I'll answer that. Mr. President Donald J. Trump, I am a registered Republican, not that that matters because this is not political. However, I cordially invite you to the Capitol to meet me in person so you can understand this is not a hoax. We are real human beings. This is real trauma.
What does it feel like emotionally to hear that?
Devastating.
It's being gutted from the inside out. Not that I would know what that feels like, but I imagine it's the anxiety buildup with the depression and the survival mode, and then your nervous system goes limp and ironically is shot. And it feels like you just want to explode inside because nobody, again, is understanding that this is a real situation. These women are real. We're here in person. To say that it's a hoax is just not, please humanize us. I would like Donald J. Trump and every person in America and around the world to humanize us, to see us for who we are and to hear us for what we have to say. There is no hoax. The abuse was real. Now, what goes on behind closed doors, I can't speak for that. What happens around the world politically, I cannot speak for that. But I am here with all of these women, including our attorneys, and I would be more than happy to meet with him, and I will meet him halfway.
Ms. Edwards, I wonder if any of the victims could respond to the news from recently about Ghislaine Maxwell being transferred to a lower security prison in the aftermath of speaking to Todd White.
You want that one? About her
Ghislaine
transfer.
Oh, yeah.
I'm happy to speak to that. We were horrified to learn that she had been transferred to a prison camp. She is someone who was found guilty by a jury of sex trafficking. She not only, we often hear that she procured women for Jeffrey, which I think is a very sort of polite and minimizing term. She also participated in the abuse. She was a major architect of the scheme. And the fact that she has painted herself as a victim, I think is disgusting. And it was horrifying, I think, to us that we were not told about her prison transfer. We found out about it in the news. 1 minute, I think Anushka maybe.
So, Anushka DeGiorgio, I testified alongside Annie at the trial of Ghislaine Maxwell. I was horrified when I found out not only had Ghislaine Maxwell been transferred to what's called a low security. It's really is like like a holiday camp. And then afterwards, I got a notification from the Department of Justice telling me that this was going to happen when it had already happened. This woman abused children. I was abused by Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell for over 10 years. Ghislaine Maxwell was present for some of my abuse at the hand of Jeffrey Epstein. She was present, she was complicit, she was enabling, and it is appalling and disgusting. And it's one of my worst nightmares that she not only be transferred, but at the possibility that's very much going around that she might be pardoned. This is not okay, guys. This is not okay.
And I just want to add that I think it sends a very dangerous message to our country, to the young people in our country, that someone that we all know is aware of these crimes could be given a pass.
And just for the last one, the last survivor who just spoke, the last survivor who just spoke, she said that Epstein would brag about her relationship with Donald Trump. Could she please elaborate about that?
Shante.
Get to the microphones.
Get close.
Yeah, I did say that. My first trip to the Palm Beach residence, I drove there from the airport with Ghislaine Maxwell, and Jeffrey and Ghislaine were always very boastful about their friends, their famous or powerful friends, and his biggest brag forever was that he was very good friends with Donald Trump. He had an 8x10 framed picture of him on his desk with the two of them. Like, they were very close.
Yeah. Go ahead. What? One second.
For this client list that you and Vegas are putting together, you said it would be confidential, but will the public? Could you clarify? Will the public get to see about the list?
So, Lisa, what's your envision here?
Is it going to go to the public or just amongst the survivors? No, we're reaching out to survivors that are
Okay,
scared.
so come on up.
We're reaching out to survivors that are scared to come forward and that also know who they were trafficked to. So that's the list that we're compiling. We're not quite sure, how we're going to release that, or even if we're going to. The Department of Justice needs to release the list.
Right?
Yes.
For folks at home, they might be confused. Survivors know the names. You've seen these powerful people. Why can't you say the names? Could you just explain for folks?
Why do we have to say the names when the government knows the names? And we're also scared to do so. Look what's happened to so many of the survivors that have revealed names.
Yeah, I find it
I think it's also worth saying that having represented, I think, between our firm and Boyce Schiller, hundreds of victims, and we've talked to them about the various people that they were farmed out to. So we've created somewhat of a list. Most of these individuals, the victims, are very scared to say these names because they could get sued, they're going to get attacked, and nobody protected them the first time. And that was against one person. So is there a list? There is a list, but just to dispel kind of the common theme here, every one of these women was abused by Jeffrey Epstein, and his scheme was to personally abuse women. When they reached a certain age, he did farm a section of them, some of them, out to some of his friends. That doesn't mean all of his friends. With that said, I'm more than happy to assist in helping create the list behind the scenes and see what we do with it.
But if someone's interested,
Go ahead.
Hold on. I think if someone's interested in prosecuting, they may have something different to say about sharing a list, but they're not sharing a list for nothing to happen. And that's the experience that they've had for all of these years.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you all. We're waiting to see the fate of this discharge petition right now as we're here. The speaker and others have said that the people he met with yesterday had concerns about your names being released if this bill were passed. And some people I talked to today are not signing the discharge petition because they say you don't want them to. Can you clarify if that is accurate?
Do any of the survivors here not want the bill to pass?
First of all, our legislation, Ro Khanna and I went through this. We talked about this, and we were very careful to make sure that there is an exception so that personally identifiable information, not just their names, but anything they could be identified by, would not be disclosed.
And can you speak to that as survivors yourself? Just
But I think all of them are on the same page. That they want everything released.
want the bill to pass.
Yes, they unequivocally redact personally identifying information and release everything else.
Mr. Edwards, Mr. Edwards.
Okay.
So, Mr. Edwards, thank you.
Uh-oh. Yeah, sure.
Marina, you have stayed silent for so many years. Today, this is the first time, if you understand correctly, you have never before gone public with your story and to share this. Can you help us understand why today, why now, and why here?
Well, it is not okay for us to be silenced, and it's not okay for Jeffrey Epstein and everybody else to be put on a pedestal. I think everybody needs to hear from us because we know what went on, right? And there is not only me who's been silenced, there are hundreds of women that are silenced. My hope is to stop this abuse for the future, right? For people that are coming up, for women. My daughter, for example, these women have daughters. They most definitely don't want that anymore. And I think mainly this is therapy for all of us too. You know, we want to be heard. Nobody also has never asked me to speak. That's also another thing. So I can say for all of us here, we are here. We want this bill to pass. It is very important. Okay. And we need transparency. We are tired of looking at the news and seeing Jeffrey Epstein's name and saying that this is a hoax. We are tired of it. We are done. We're not going to be silenced. And I hope that my voice will bring other survivors and other victims to come along and speak up so that we can be more of a stronger voice and louder. Listen, I don't want to send a direct message to him. I'm already scared enough. Yeah, just pass the vote. Listen to us. This is not a hoax. Like, it's not going to go away. And like I said on my speech earlier, we're not going to be silenced anymore. We will be speaking moving forward wherever we need to be. We will be, and we need to pass this.
Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Jordan Conrad, Gateway Pundit. You know, for years we've heard that there's an Epstein client list or some kind of list. And now we hear from DOJ that there's no list. The question for all the victims, what do you guys think? I know you're working on your own list, but do you believe that Jeffrey Epstein had a list?
Yeah. So there's not a list. Yeah. So here's what it was. Just like you heard everybody today, Jeffrey Epstein created through an organization that of enablers, of people that were on his payroll. It was a complicated scheme where others should still be investigated because they helped to enable him and operate this scheme. Without those people, he could not have done this. But the purpose was for him to personally abuse people. With that being said, certain of his friends, he farmed out certain of the women that he was exploiting too. But that wasn't the primary purpose of that scheme. And I don't think he wrote the names of those people down. There's not a list of, hey, here's all of the people that I sent females to. That's just not how that organization works.
Mr. Edwards,
agreed?
Is there any evidence that Jeffrey Epstein was involved with or tied to the CIA or a foreign intelligence operation?
I think that the safest thing for me to say is all files should come out, whether it is for this with the CIA, FinCEN, SEC, FBI. I'm not just making these up haphazardly. I'm giving you a roadmap where to look.
So if this bill
Go ahead. I'll go first and then I'll let them. They're much more important than me, but I don't understand why it's a hostile act. I can tell you that I talked to President Trump back in 2009, and several times after that, he didn't think that it was a hoax then. In fact, he helped me. He got on the phone. He told me things that were helping our investigation. Now, our investigation wasn't looking into him, but he was helping us then. He didn't treat this as a hoax. So at this point in time, I would hope that he would revert back to what he was saying to get elected, which is, I want transparency. This about face that occurred, none of us understand it. In fact, I don't understand how this is an issue that's even up for debate. How do you not stand behind these women after you've heard their stories and know that hundreds of them were abused, and it was only because files are being kept in secrecy? The world should know who he is, who protected him, and the other people that are out there to be investigated need to be investigated. Go ahead.
Are there any people who are currently serving in government who are named, who you know of, are in these files, who you had relations with, anything of that sort who Jeffrey Epstein connected you with? Are you willing to say yes or no?
I don't think I can answer that. Sorry.
I think she's referring to my speech.
Hi, Anushka DeGiorgio. I have been threatened. I was threatened by phone. My daughter was threatened when I was volunteering to participate in, by means of being a witness in a civil lawsuit that Virginia Giuffre was bringing against Ghislaine Maxwell. I have been followed. I have been stalked. I have been followed not only by journalists, but by people who do not get out of the car and do not try and talk to me and just drive behind me as I drive my daughter to school. So the fear is very real for us. I have also been in multiple situations with both Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, where they have been direct and indirect about implying and saying that if I was to talk, if I was to bring any kind of trouble, then there would be severe consequence, including death.
And just to add to that, Maxwell also threatened my sister Maria Farmer. When the FBI did nothing about her initial report, we did. She reported individually at that time, and then in 2002, we spoke to a reporter at Vanity Fair, telling our stories, fearful that perhaps other people were being harmed. We were not. We believed that was going to make a difference. We believed that would be put in print, and that story was crushed. And it was because of their power, and the message that we got from that was direct threats from Maxwell to my sister about her well-being and her safety and that of our family. So I think many people have similar stories of threats. That has been a very real part of this case.
Go ahead, over here.
Have any connection or interaction with Epstein's alleged financier, Leslie Wexner?
No.
Nope.
You want to address that?
I just want to say one thing that's very clear when people say, please share names. There are names that are very well known, like that of Les Wexner, who everyone knows supplied an enormous amount of Epstein's financial wealth and allowed this operation to happen. So it's, I think, confusing to many of us why there have not been more ramifications for him, and he's been seen as a victim when clearly I believe there's more to it.
But, yep.
So you represented Virginia Roberts for years. She eventually had to recant the allegations that she made against Alan Dershowitz. She alleged that.
We're not talking. All right, next question.
Next question.
Thank you.
Who's next?
Why is it that she should be?
Yeah, no, we're not answering your question. Anybody else?
Go ahead.
How did the victims feel about the interview that was given to Ghislaine Maxwell?
There's a woman trying to say something.
That's better. Okay, ma'am, I think that you had a question.
When you talked in the past on MSNBC about the existence of the Epstein birthday book, have you yourself in the course of litigation seen it?
I don't know that we're able to reveal what we've seen and what we have not seen by way of protective order. But my point being in that circumstance was, if anybody wants answers, there's an easy place to get it. I told you where to get it. I said the estate of Jeffrey Epstein has it. Serve a subpoena on them. They'll turn it over. And if we had served a subpoena on them in the past, they would have turned it over and we would have seen it, which I don't usually miss subpoenas like that. So there we go.
Mr. Edwards, can you elaborate
Go ahead.
on the? Just say one thing on that. To your question about the allegations, there's a simple answer. Release the files. Let the American public decide. Instead of harassing, I gave you your say. Look.
You're hired by Dershowitz.
But, you've been heard. And even Alan Dershowitz says to release the files. Release the files. That is the answer, and that's what we're here for. And that is the. Yeah.
You gotta go. You gotta go. Can you elaborate on the?
Sorry.
You said that.
One second. Yeah.
You said that Donald Trump gave you help in 2009. Can you elaborate on your interactions with Donald Trump back in 2009? And for any of the victims, they didn't ever see the president, well, then not president yet, but they didn't ever see Trump with Epstein in any way.
I don't know who's. I don't think that we can answer that question. Did anybody see Trump with Epstein back then? This is really not a political thing. We want the passage of the bill, and this is not to call out President Trump. My point was that he was friendly back then, did not think that it was a hoax, and was trying to help. And now it seems like all of a sudden somebody's in his ear and he's not. So I'm hoping he'll come back to where he was back in 2009, be on the side of the victims and stand with us.
On the passage of the bill,
Go ahead. Did you answer that? Did you answer that? Do you want to answer it?
I would.
Teresa will step up.
I would. Teresa J. Home. Happy to speak on that because what I will say is she got this airtime and platform. Her voice was elevated way before our voices were elevated here today. And that same calm, manipulative voice that she had so polite there that day with Todd Blanche was the same polite, coercive, manipulative voice that I heard as she was grooming me to then send me off to the home of Jeffrey Epstein where he would assault me. So that's what she was doing for hours, speaking with me, building relationship with me, building trust with me, allowing me to believe that I was going to get this job, a dream job that I had been recruited from my college, flown across the country from Los Angeles to New York City to interview, so I thought. So her voice that day was the same voice that sent me off to a monster. So nothing can be believed from what she says because she's been charged with perjury. I myself could sit there and listen. And as I did, I sat there and listened to this woman's voice lie. And there was no pushback from Todd Blanche because does he even have the facts to be able to push back on her? Yeah. We could sit there and push back. Why didn't we get to attend that? Why weren't we there that day? Or why wasn't even one of us consulted prior to that day in that meeting? And why on earth has she been moved from Florida to her? It basically is prison spa. I mean, let's be real. None of us were consulted. I found out just like everyone here found out through the media, through all of you. We found out about Ghislaine's transfer. So I'm very angry to sit there and listen. The feelings that come up listening to this woman's voice is repulsive. Yes, I would say it's triggering. We all work very hard on healing, and it still gets to us after 2 decades. It's a very long answer, but it's repulsive to sit there and listen to her voice in her interview.
Can we take two more questions? One over here.
Directly led to $100 million payment from JP Morgan to the Virgin Islands. Will you go after the DOJ, the FBI, because they're sitting on evidence? I've held the evidence in my hands.
I think that there's nobody that's immune from us going after them if there's a legitimate action to take. So to the extent that evidence exists, then show it to us and we'll help in every way we can. We stand with the victims. Okay. One more.
Survivors speak to, speaking of being threatened and being afraid to come forward with a story, to the case of Katie Johnson, who alleged that Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein.
I don't think we can talk about. I don't think we can talk about that case. I do think it's worth saying, though, despite the comments that he made, Virginia Roberts Giuffre is an American hero. She is somebody. She is somebody without whom we would not be able to have this voice. She was the one who had courage to name names, speak out against people, and she was standing up against everybody at one time with an enormous amount of pressure.
And most of these women are here because of Virginia Roberts Giuffre. So,
all right, last one.
Clearly not us.
I don't think that anybody knows, but I can tell you that in the oversight committee meeting yesterday, they indicated that they were all for transparency, releasing the files, and asked us to hold them accountable. Isn't that right?
Yes.
They said hold them accountable, so we intend to hold them accountable.
That's up to them.
We're going to show them where to go with it, and as long as they're doing their job, they should. I'm going to turn it back over to Ro Khanna. Thank you.
Let me just say this. Let me say this. I think the people back who are testifying here today or speaking out today, they are American heroes. Let's give them another round of applause. And you say, look, Thomas, Marjorie, and I, we're huge believers in the First Amendment, and we believe in free speech, and we take abuse all the time. But you see, you see why it's so hard to do what they have done, because they come forward and you subject yourself to national scrutiny and national questioning. And I just want to say from the bottom of my heart how appreciative I am and how proud I am of what you've done today. You've made a big difference. Before I bring on Marjorie and then Thomas will have the last word, I want to summarize three basic things that I heard from the survivors. First, they want to know why our government covered up for someone rich and powerful. Why is it that we have two Americas? People say, why do you need to release the Epstein files if Epstein is dead and Maxwell is in jail? Because we don't know who all was involved in the cover-up. Why are there rich and powerful people who didn't have justice? They want to know that. Second, many said it's important for their own closure. They don't know their own abuse. They want to understand what's in these files for themselves. And third, we heard that there are many others who obviously were involved. And they want to know, and the American people deserve to know what was there in those files. I actually think they're helping us come together as a country. I've never done a press conference with Marjorie Taylor Greene before. I've done some with Tuss, but look, this country is divided and exhausted. This is one thing that we can come together on.
Yes.
And I was very clear with Thomas. This is not against President Trump. I would like nothing more than a Truth Social post for him after this press conference saying, just release the files. Be with Massie Khanna. This is about something much deeper. It is about bringing this country together to stand for America's kids, to restore trust, and to move this country forward. So thank you to the survivors for helping us do that. Now I want to introduce Marjorie Taylor Greene. Thank you.
Thank you. For everyone watching at home, I think it's important to put yourself in these women's shoes. As you're questioning, why can't they just name the names? What you don't realize is they just told their stories of being raped and being abused, being victimized, being manipulated, being coerced, and basically held in a prison of captivity of sexual abuse while they were young teenagers and extremely young, vulnerable women. And in Jeffrey Epstein's home and the places they went with him, they saw the most powerful people in the world in his pictures, and they saw him with those people. Can you imagine how terrifying it would be to name names like that? These are some of the richest, most powerful people in the world that could sue these women into poverty and homelessness. Yeah, it's a scary thing to name names, but I will tell you, I'm not afraid to name names. And so if they want to give me a list, I will walk in that Capitol on the House floor and I'll say every damn name that abused these women. I can do that for them, and I'd be proud to do it. Now, another thing, this is not about politics. And this is a boiling point in American history where the American people, just like Ro just said, there's become two Americas. There's the America for the rich and the powerful and the elite, where they never face any struggles or problems and never experience what real America goes through. And then there's forgotten America that faces all the problems and deals with all the issues and never gets justice for being sexually assaulted and raped by a monster. It shouldn't exist anymore, and people are sick of it. So let's recognize the fact that the administration before and the one before it and the one before it and the one before it and before it never did anything about this. So this isn't one political party or the other. It's a culmination of everyone worked together to silence these women and protect Jeffrey Epstein and his cabal. And this is not just rich, powerful people. Think his drivers, his maids, his chefs, all the people, people that worked in his home, security guards. I heard one story from a young woman that was being raped by Jeffrey Epstein when he was out on work release while he was serving time in prison and had an ankle monitor on his leg. Guess what? There was a police officer outside that door. So this list of names is quite a list of names, and it doesn't extend just in the rich, powerful circles. It extends down to the very bottom where people were paid. And again, I will say this, there's victims suffering today in similar circumstances, and they're terrified to name the names of the people that are currently abusing them. And so with these brave, courageous women fighting this fight, this is a fight for women and children and any person that is facing sexual abuse and rape and captivity and human trafficking right now. And so here's what I ask you in the press. Don't go for salacious headlines. Go for the truth and defend these women and help those of us in Congress that are crossing our political party lines for doing the right thing and trying to do it together. And thank you, Ro, and thank you, Thomas. And now I recognize Thomas Massey from Kentucky.
Well, there's three branches of government, and we're supposed to keep each other accountable. And that's what we're doing here today in the People's House. We're standing in front of the People's House with real people, not a hoax. And they've told their story. We wanted to give them a platform to speak, and they've had it. They stepped up, and they were brave. But I also today hope that they would persuade my colleagues to join this effort. But I found out something today that happened that I wasn't expecting. They persuaded me to fight even harder. I'm not going to give up. And I want to end with this call to action. First, a call to action to my colleagues who just an hour before this press conference were prepared. They were given a fig leaf. We'll put a resolution on the floor so that you can say that you voted to protect the survivors. Their resolution doesn't really do anything. And that's the oldest trick in the swamp. When you want to kill the momentum, when you want to kill initiative, you introduce a placebo, a different bill that does nothing, and then try to pull the wool over the eyes of the American people. That's not going to happen this time. We demand real accountability. I encourage my colleagues, please, there's over 200 Republicans who have not signed this discharge petition. We only need 2 of them to sign it, and every Democrat will sign it. And that will get us the number we need to force this vote, to pass a law, not a polite request to the DOJ to police themselves. No, we need legally binding legislation to force that to happen. And my main call to action is to the people watching these live feeds that are going through these cameras right now. Congressmen, listen to you. Light up their phones, burn down the phone lines here in Washington, D.C. Ask them the questions that these survivors wanted you to ask them. Why won't you be for transparency? Don't accept their answer that the bill has a flaw or that the survivors don't want it. We know that's not true. They wouldn't be fighting it so hard in this town if it wasn't the real bill. So with that, please call your congressman, tell him or her to get on this bill and to stand up for these survivors. Thank you and God bless. That's the end.
You have been watching a live feed from Washington, D.C., where survivors of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell have addressed the media. Today was a rally, a Stand With Survivors rally, and we heard from many of those survivors telling personal stories, some of them for the very first time, and hearing from lawmakers as well as the survivors' attorneys. But this was not just a rally about building support and hearing those stories. These survivors were really petitioning lawmakers and making appeals to the public and appeals to President Trump to pass the Epstein Files Transparency Act discharge petition. This piece of legislation would require the full release of the Epstein files with personal information redacted, but would provide a lot of information that has been redacted from the files that are already made public, as well as make files that have not been made public available to the public. As of right now, according to what we just heard, 212 Democrats have committed to signing and agreeing to that act. 4 Republicans have done the same, and they are saying that they need 2 more Republicans in order for this to pass. I'm going to walk through a couple of the highlights from this, and then we're going to actually hear from some of the survivors. Again, what we heard today was these survivors appealing to President Trump, not only about this act, but also that he would rule out a pardon of Ghislaine Maxwell, which of course has been a conversation over the past couple of weeks. Some of the survivors said that in the meantime, this waiting for this full release, not having all the information out there, has created space for conspiracy theories and for people to talk on social media. And they said that that's really hurting them even more, causing them anxiety. Some of the survivors said that because of the trauma they went through, they don't actually even remember the extent of what they've been through, and that actually having this information out there would be really key in their healing, helping them kind of piece together what they've been through. I want to go through some of the things that we heard. A lot of it is very disturbing. One of the survivors multiple survivors talking about, first encountering Jeffrey Epstein as children, as young as 14 years old. Many of these women said that they were 14 when they met him, and that they were actually introduced to him by another child. One woman said she was 14. The classmate who introduced her to him was 13. They told stories of being introduced to him, brought to his home, one in New York, one in Florida, and asked to give him a massage in exchange for money. One woman said that, she gave that service for $200, and that he fully undressed and did inappropriate things further than just being there, and then asked her to bring other classmates to him and that he would pay her $200 for that as well, and basically said she was not given a choice. We heard from multiple women who had similar stories, and I want to play you a clip now from a woman who said she also encountered Epstein when she was 14.
And I was 16 years old when I was flown to New Mexico to spend a weekend with Epstein and Maxwell. That same year, 1996, my sister, Maria Farmer, reported what happened to me there, along with reporting her own assault at their hands and their theft of sensitive photos of herself, of me, and our younger sister that she had taken for her work as a figurative painter. I am now 46 years old. 30 years later, we still do not know why that report wasn't properly investigated, or why Epstein and his associates were allowed to harm hundreds, if not thousands, of other girls and young women. We have never been told whether those images were found when they discovered a large amount of child sexual abuse material on his property. As a psychologist, I understand that when the systems meant to protect us recreate the abuse cycle, the betrayal that occurs can be just as damaging as the original trauma. This happens when survivors of these crimes are not believed, when our well-being is not weighed as heavily as those who have more resources or more privilege, and when perpetrators of these crimes are given a platform rather than.
And I did misspeak there. The survivor who just spoke actually encountered Epstein when she was 16, but we did hear from multiple women who were as young as 14 when they met him. Some of the other things that we heard here, we heard from a woman who said, multiple women actually, who said they were not children when they met him, but they were young and they were aspiring actresses and models, and really spoke to the influence and power that both Epstein and Maxwell had in that space. One of the women said she met with him because she was an aspiring actress. She was flown to his island, and that he promised her that he would help her with her career, and then the abuse ensued. She actually talked about being flown to Africa with him and some of his powerful friends on a trip, and she said that former President Bill Clinton was on that trip as well. She said that Epstein bragged about his relationships with a lot of powerful people, and she said that his, quote, biggest brag was his relationship with current President Trump. One of the things that one of the women said, this was one of the women who said she was a model and really trying to, up her career, and that was how she came in contact with them and was abused as well. She made an announcement today and said that the survivors are actually going to come together and create what they are calling their own Epstein list of the clients that they came in touch with, friends with people who were hanging out with Epstein that they came in contact with. She said, we know who these people are. We know who was in the room with us when we were there. We're going to make our own list. She said she's not sure if it's ever going to be made public, but that they are reaching out to other survivors to talk to them about the influential people that they came in contact with, especially as there's a big conversation about whether these documents and this information will be made public. And after she made that announcement, it was also noteworthy that Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene said that if they do make that list and they give it to her, she will make it public. She said she is not afraid to name names. All of what we heard today really all came back to this understanding of how traumatic this has been for so many of these survivors. Many of the women mentioned that there are so many survivors who were not able to be there today. Many of them have lost their lives just with the trauma and the anxiety and the depression that have come from this, and so they really took.
If you crave nature but still shop online, Night and Day Herbals is your dream come true. Discover premium herbal soaps, shampoos, and CBD products. All organic, all for you. Shop now at nightandayherbals.com.